All right. Welcome, welcome everyone. See you joining us here for the webinar today. Glad to see your names. As you're arriving, if you could just chat to all panelists and participants, what city you're watching from, what pronouns you use, what organization you're a part of, if any, and who you're here in solidarity with, like what communities. So I'll say that again for folks who are just arriving. As you're arriving, if you could chat, what city you're watching from, what pronouns you use, what organization you're a part of, if any, or organizations, and who you're here in solidarity with. And just a reminder in the chat for those of you who are joining us on Zoom, to make sure you click the button that says all panelists and participants. All right, we got folks from Oakland, right on, San Jose, Pleasanton, California, San Francisco, lots of Bay Area represented, Chicago, right on, welcome, Anchorage, Alaska, dope, Livermore, Los Angeles, Oakland, Berkeley, Concord. Let's see some of the organizations in the room. LA School District, right on, Los Angeles School District. Folks with Surge, that's what's up. See Santa Rosa. Some from Michigan, right on here with Michigan State University, Santa Cruz. Welcome, welcome. And if you're watching us on the live stream, we are glad that you're here with us as well. And if you would like, please feel free to, in the comments on the live stream, to share the same info, what city you're watching from, any organizations you're a part of, pronouns you use, and who you're here in solidarity with. Let's see. Folks are here in solidarity with people of color, absolutely. Solidarity with other anti-racists, right on, in defense of Black lives. Yeah, that's what's up, you're in the right place. Welcome. For those of you who are here on Zoom, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A button, which is on the bottom of your screen, the toolbar. And feel free to share any questions, write any questions using that button throughout the presentation. We'll do our best to address the questions that we can at the end as we have time. And if you're watching us on the live stream, go ahead and add your questions to the comments, and we'll do our best to address those as well. So we've got some more folks joining us from Peoria, right on. Welcome. More Oakland, Bay Area, Los Angeles. That's what's up. From Philly, hey Juno, with Act Up Philly, right on. Great to see so many folks here. Glad you could join us on this Saturday. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Katie. I use she, her pronouns. I'm here with Community Ready Corps Allies and Accomplices. I'm a white woman with short blonde hair, wearing glasses and a blue striped shirt. And the reason that I'm describing my appearance, and all the panelists that you'll see today and hear from are going to do our best to describe ourselves as well as what's on the screen, is for accessibility reasons. That's the same reason that we have captioning. Please note that the captioning that you're seeing is a feature that we found on Google, so there's definitely going to be imperfections in the captioning, so bear with us. But we're glad you all are here. If we could go to the next slide, we'll go ahead and get started. Great. So you're here at a CRCAA webinar, and who is Community Ready Corps Allies and Accomplices? So we're an organization that was founded, created and founded by Community Ready Corps, which is a Black liberation organization that works toward self-determination in all disenfranchised communities, particularly the Black community. And CRC has been in existence, Community Ready Corps, our founder, has been in existence since Oscar Grant was murdered at Fruitvale BART back in January 1st, 2009. And CRCA was called into existence to organize white people to practice the 5 methods to dismantle white supremacy. And we do so in a direct and disciplined relationship with Community Ready Corps. And so why should white folks dismantle white supremacy? Why is it important that white people in particular do this work? That's because, as I'm sure you all would agree, those of you who are white folks here and those of you who are not, is that white people have a particular access to power and privilege. This is our problem to address. This isn't a problem with anyone besides ourselves. It's our ancestors and our present existence that perpetuates and created this system. And so we are responsible to tear it down. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned before, CRCA practices and propagates the 5 methods, which is the prescription that Community Ready Corps gave us as this is what white folks should do to dismantle white supremacy and fight the persistent reestablishment of white supremacy. And we'll get into more on specifically how to practice the 5 methods in relationship to intervening against white nationalism. But just briefly, I'll go into what each method is. So education, pretty straightforward. White folks need to build anti-racist consciousness among other white people. Organization, we need to organize other white folks and do this work collectively and get out of the mindset of being able to do anything as an individual. We need to contribute and not control, which means we need to strategically give our labor, skills, time in service of Black and Brown-led movements, and do so in a way that doesn't perpetuate our control. Intervention is what we're really going to dive into today, which is white folks taking responsibility for preventing racist harm. And divestment, which is about redistributing stolen wealth, land, and resources. Next slide, please. So we want to take a minute to acknowledge Community Ready Corps and some of the phenomenal work that they've been doing since their existence, since they first started back in 2009. This is a photo from late February, early March this year. Community Ready Corps handing out masks out in East Oakland. This is before shelter in place, before quarantine. Community Ready Corps started handing out masks and PPE in response to the wildfires that have been happening here in California back in the fall of last year. And we're continuing to do that work and have continued to supply masks and other personal protective equipment to Black communities in response to the coronavirus, as well as doing education on the coronavirus. They also, you probably have heard of them for the community safety work that they do. Recently, for instance, when nooses were found hung around Lake Merritt here in Oakland, Community Ready Corps set up a 24-hour community patrol of the lake for 4 days, really showing that, you know, in this moment of divesting from police and investing in what really keeps us safe, they really have a model of how to do that in a way that doesn't rely on police and doesn't involve policing, period. And you can learn more about their work by going to blacksolidarity.org. For those of you on the Zoom, that link was just shared with you in the chat. Next slide, please. So, what does Community Ready Corps define as white nationalism? So white nationalism, Community Ready Corps' definition is that it's a power system based on the concept of white supremacy. It's the codification of white supremacy into policies and procedures with the ultimate objective of unchallenged white hegemonic power. And for those of you who don't know what hegemonic means, that means like dominant or ruling. And so what this definition really helps us understand is that white nationalism is scientific. It's not an accident. It's not just unconscious bias. It's a plan, right? And it permeates every aspect of our lives. We're going to be talking about extreme white nationalists, really folks who are more like on the fringe in terms of white people. Obviously that's getting more mainstreamed, which is a problem, but like all white people are implicated in white nationalism and perpetuating white supremacy. And so because it's so deep and there's so much to uncover here, we want to make it clear that we're not going to get into everything about white nationalism here in this presentation. If you think of it like a puzzle, what we're really trying to do today is put together the pieces of the border or the frame of that puzzle, create the container from which more study and more education and more action can be taken. We also want to note there's still, even with just building the frame of this puzzle, it's going to be a lot of information and it may not sink in the first time around. And so this webinar is being recorded as we speak on CRCA's Facebook page. So we want you to please consider this webinar as a resource to refer back to as you need or want. And you'll find it again on CRCA's Facebook page. Next slide, please. So content warning, yeah. We're gonna be talking about some really ugly and violent things. We're gonna be sharing some imagery and information that's disturbing, particularly in relationship to people of color, women, queer people, Jewish people. You know, we've been taught, we believe what Chairman Fred Hampton Jr. says, which is that we've got to use brutal terms for brutal realities. And these realities are brutal. And we need to really understand them and not be liberal about them, because that doesn't serve our end of undermining this movement and undermining white nationalism in general. Next slide, please. So America was founded on white supremacy. Yeah. When we talk about white nationalism, just like in CRC's definition of white nationalism, we're talking about the foundation of this country and not just a fringe movement. We want to be really clear about that. White supremacy's only ideological center is white dominance and power. One thing to definitely take away from today's presentation is that white supremacy is flexible and adaptable. It can shapeshift and take any form it needs to in order to maintain that dominance and power. The status quo is white supremacy. There are different styles of white supremacy that compete with each other, like conservative white supremacists versus neoliberal white supremacists versus the alt-right. But status quo, the air we breathe, the water we drink, is white supremacy. And those of us who identify as progressive, radical, liberal white folks also have every ability to perpetuate it, which is why we practice the 5 methods. And I'll hand it over to Kelsey to continue.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white cis femme woman with long blonde hair and wearing a red shirt. We're looking at a slide of a path that splits into 2, one side of the path goes towards a thunderstorm, one side of the path goes towards the sunshine, and in the middle is a sign that says COVID-19 crisis. So why is right now such an important period in the fight to end white supremacy? Because the country is in crisis. We're in a global pandemic. We're seeing unrest and uprising following the murder of George Floyd. People are out of work. People are dying. The word crisis comes from the Greek root krisis, that's defined as turning point in a disease, the change which indicates recovery or death. We know from studying history that material crises often lead to a crisis of legitimacy, a period when a critical mass of people lose faith in the established system and start seriously considering alternatives. During these periods, previously marginal political ideas can gain traction, and with the right combination of factors, even become dominant. So the last big crisis in the US was the 2008 recession, where we also saw the largest foreclosure crisis and destruction of Black wealth since the burning of Black Wall Street in 1921. This crisis impacted everyone, but it impacted Black folks the most, especially to the degree that the Black community is still recovering from the 2008 crisis. A crisis is equal parts opportunity and threat. Who will gain traction during this period? A movement for racial justice and a peaceful future where everyone can thrive, or the right-wing white nationalist movement? White people are still a numerical majority in the US, and we have a disproportionate amount of power. White people as a group will play a decisive role in this turning point, especially when it comes to organizing our white community. But I first want to uplift the organizing we're already seeing Black movement leaders doing to combat the threat right now. Next slide, please. So this is a photo of Dominique Walker, an organizer with the Black Housing Union, with a sign on a car that says, "COVID kills Black people more. Why?" So this photo was taken from an action the Black Housing Union did in Oakland after the shelter-in-place order first came down, calling on the government to house homeless people immediately. It asks that question: COVID-19 kills Black people more. Why? During this time, we're seeing pre-existing economic and health inequities becoming exacerbated. Despite being a progressive city, Oakland is living in apartheid levels of inequality. Oakland already had a failing grade in racial equity before this pandemic started. In Oakland, 7 out of 10 unhoused folks are Black. Systemic barriers to accessing shelter during this pandemic is a death sentence. There was a report that came out through the city of Oakland a few years ago studying racial inequity across multiple sectors. And one indicator from the report shows that even for folks who are housed, the life expectancy of someone living in the Oakland Flats, an area housing predominantly poor Black and brown folks, is 15 years less than someone living in the Oakland Hills, an area housing predominantly rich white folks. We also know essential workers are disproportionately Black and brown, and they're treated as expendable. They likely do not have access to protective equipment, sick days, healthcare, etc. And there's a saying, when America gets the sniffles, Black America gets the flu. So in addition to the organizing of the Black Housing Union, we want to uplift the Black New Deal, co-created by Community Ready Corps. It has a set of demands emphasizing a recovery plan that centers the most impacted, the Black community. The Black community knows what they need, and it's our job to listen, to learn, and to do the work to organize our white community. Before getting back into talking about white nationalists, let's take a minute to read through the Black New Deal. And I think Nikki just sent you a link to it in the chat. Yeah, so just take a moment, read it over. And with that, I will pass it off to Nicole.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole. I'm a member of CRCA. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman with long blonde hair wearing a Anti-Police Terror Project sweatshirt. Shout out to their organizing. And we want to share a framework that Community Ready Corps uses a lot about primary and secondary predators. So the primary predator is the white power system. Like Katie was talking about earlier in the webinar, like this country was founded as a white nationalist project. And so the United States government, the US empire, capitalism, and like all these dominant institutions in this country, so the big banks, the major political parties, both of them, the corporate media, the courts, the jails, the prisons, the education system, this entire system is predatory. It's a system that operates in a violent, abusive, exploitative, coercive manner. That's kind of like, that's the status quo. That's how things are. That's how they've been for hundreds of years. And because that's the nature of our dominant institutions, we all get taught to behave that way as well. And we are turned into secondary predators. So we're taught that you have to fuck other people over in order to survive. We're taught that we have to compete with each other rather than cooperate with each other. And so we want to be really clear that when we're talking about white nationalism, the US empire is a white nation. Like, it was founded as such. There's ways that it's like in a process of negotiation around that. And that's part of why we're seeing this big uptick in white nationalist activity, is because people feel like this country is slipping away from being like the white nation that it was founded to be. And so we are in a fight, like as anti-fascists and as anti-racists, we are in a fight with our own government and our own dominant institutions. And we also have a fight with secondary predators. So the folks that you see in this photo, this is a photo from the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville in 2017. People probably saw a lot of these images at the time of all these white men with tiki torches. These are secondary predators. So they're symptoms of and surrogates for the white nationalist power system. And so they do a lot of work on behalf of that system. And if that system needs to throw these folks under the bus in order to like maintain dominance, they'll do that. And so as anti-racists, we have to build our capacity to fight both, to fight the system and to fight the surrogates. But, you know, we really do believe that we have to fight the surrogates. Because if we can't fight these folks, then we're not going to win our fight with the system. And a big part of this is because, and we're going to talk about this more throughout the presentation, like social movements really do impact the state. The state does get forced to respond. And so if the sort of like neo-white nationalist grassroots movement continues to grow and become more popular, that's something that's going to impact the state a lot. And things can get a lot worse than they already are. All right, so we're going to talk about eugenics. Most people, when they think about eugenics, they think about the Nazis, and it's really important for us all to understand that the Nazis got most of their ideas about eugenics, and particularly their ideas about how to carry it out, from middle and upper class white people in America. That's where that movement started. It started here with people like us. It didn't start in Germany. Eugenics is the quote unquote scientific study of how to improve a race of people. It's not particularly scientific. The science that has been used to advance the eugenics movement over the years is pretty much bunk science. But that's how it was conceived of. So, you know, on this slide, this is from a pamphlet, a eugenics pamphlet back in the day. It said unfit human traits such as feeble-mindedness, epilepsy, criminality, insanity, alcoholism, pauperism, and many others run in families and are inherited in exactly the same way as color in guinea pigs. If all marriages were eugenic, we could breed out most of this unfitness in 3 generations. So this was the goal of the eugenics movement. It started with this idea that there is a kind of human being that's the right kind of human being, and that deviations from that breaking the law, being insane, alcoholism, pauperism, which is just being poor, are, you know, a type of human being that should be eliminated. These people were seen as a burden on society, and the goal of eugenics was to get rid of them within 3 generations. Obviously, in this country, like, all of these undesirable traits were highly racialized. And so the main targets of the eugenics movement in the US were Indigenous people, Black people, poor people, disabled people. And we just want to share a little bit. Again, we could do a 2-hour thing just on the eugenics movement. It's really important to understand, but we're just going to get the big blocks today. Like I said, it's the science behind this movement is total bullshit, and really is not something that would have probably caught on were it not for the fact that some very rich people really adopted eugenics as their cause. So I want to bring your attention to John Kellogg, Kellogg, like the cereal, who was really one of the big founders of the early eugenics movement. So Kellogg created and distributed quote unquote scientific journals promoting eugenics within the medical establishment. They created studies that created a database of quote unquote undesirable families targeted for legislation. And then they funded, you know, getting these studies in these databases translated into actual legislation in many states that targeted people for sterilization, to get rid of these undesirable people. As a result of this legislation, between 1907 and 1963, again, many of these pieces of legislation were not repealed until 1963, over 64,000 Americans were forcibly sterilized. And 1/3 of those sterilizations took place here in California. So you're going to hear this over and over again today. California is often thought of as a very progressive state, but it really is. It was one of the homes and headquarters of the eugenics movement. It's also important to know that just because this legislation got repealed, that didn't mean that eugenics ended in this country. For example, we know that in California, as late as the early 2000s, the California prison system was forcibly sterilizing prisoners. Same idea, you know, these are people who are undesirable for society, so we have them in prison. We're going to stop them from reproducing themselves. Also here on the top right-hand corner, you'll see photos of members of the Black Legion. They basically look like KKK, but their robes are black and they have skull and crossbones. This is something we came across in our research for this presentation, right? I had never heard of the Black Legion before. The Black Legion was funded by the DuPont family and also by General Motors, so 2 of the biggest corporations in America at the time. And it was started as a terrorist organization to stop unionization in auto factories in the 1930s. During this time, there were many Black migrants who were coming up from the South to the Midwest to take these auto factory jobs, and they were beginning to unionize. So these corporations funded a group called the Black Legion to throw bombs into union halls, to set fire to labor activist homes, to torture and kill union organizers, including 50 in Detroit alone. And again, these were primarily Black workers that were being targeted and killed in the US. At its peak, the Black Legion had over 135,000 members. And the Black Legion included many, many public officials and police chiefs. Like the chief of police in Detroit was a Black Legion member. And so we just want to ask, like, why do we know about the brown shirts, you know, that were this paramilitary group that helped usher the Nazis into power? And we've, you know, a lot of us have never heard about the Black Legion. This is the history that is kept from us, but it is part of our history. And it's really important to understand that eugenics thinking still shapes healthcare today, and particularly in this pandemic. So people have probably heard a lot about how COVID will probably only kill people who have comorbidities. So there's a narrative that the only people who will die from the pandemic are people who are already in poor health, particularly due to their bad lifestyle choices. You'll see that on the right wing a lot. You know, these are people who don't take care of themselves. You know, if you're healthy, you'll be fine. That's eugenics thinking. Also, as our society has failed and is in the process of failing to flatten the curve and to keep our hospital systems from being overwhelmed, there's going to be eugenics politics in terms of how triage is handled. So if there's not enough ventilators for everyone, they're going to have to prioritize who gets a ventilator and who doesn't. And historically and currently, the way that hospitals make those decisions is they prioritize the most productive citizens over people who are disabled or elderly, people who are seen as a burden on the system. And we know that, again, that's going to be highly, highly racialized, right? The idea of who's a burden and who's productive is very, very racialized. So now we're going to get into white supremacy logic and really just try to help illuminate the frameworks and the ways of thinking that really structure the white nationalist movement and its tactics and its goals. This is a little bit like nerdy, but basically like we think with our brains, right? Like that's obvious. That's how our thoughts are coming out of our brains, and our brains have a physical structure. So for example, if I say the word cup, we all have a frame in our brain for what a cup is. It's a cylindrical container that you pour liquid into it and you drink out of it. We all know what a cup is. And so these frameworks exist in our minds, and white supremacy frameworks like the ones we're about to go into have been being built in our minds by our families, by the media, by the education system, by the government, like since we were small children. It's just like it's everywhere around us. It's so much a part of the framework of the country that we all have internalized these frameworks to some degree. And we believe that if we can really, sometimes we've internalized these frameworks so much that we can't even see them anymore. Like they're such a part of the structure of how we think that we're not even conscious of it. So our goal of this part of the presentation is to make the unconscious conscious. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Kelsey.
Thanks. So Nicole just talked about the frameworks in our minds, and I want to highlight the three main emotions that animate these frameworks before talking about more components of white supremacy logic. So these emotions are shame, fear, and scarcity. We're looking at a slide, and there's a picture of that character from Game of Thrones, who I can't remember, who walks around with a bell yelling shame with the word shame underneath it. We have a picture of Amy Cooper with the word fear underneath it, and the last picture is of toilet paper with the word scarcity underneath it. So shame. So like we saw in the eugenics movement, white supremacy has an ideal of what a human should be, and any deviation from that unattainable ideal can be used to shame someone. For fear, the world is a threat. Other people are a threat. I mean, Amy Cooper was a liberal, and yet these white supremacy frameworks live in all of us. She weaponized her fear against a Black man, knowing full well that it would risk his life. And scarcity, the idea that there isn't enough for everyone, and the only way to survive is to compete against other people. There's no room for cooperation or collaboration. And I can imagine you all have your own stories and experiences of what scarcity has looked like and felt like in this time of this pandemic. I think the toilet paper picture is a pretty relevant one. So yeah, white supremacy activates these strong emotions. It's like turning the volume all the way up. When we are activated in these three emotions, we are more likely to start acting like fascists, to become secondary predators. We need to watch for it in ourselves, and we also need to watch for it around us. So when these emotions are running the show, just be aware. Next slide, please. All right, so this slide has a picture of a white woman and a little white boy kind of like hugging on her. And it has the language, anti-racist is a code word for anti-white. White supremacist is just an anti-white slur. So this picture is a meme. It was started on an online right-wing message board in 2000, and it's part of the white genocide theory. So the white genocide theory is that there is a genocide in process against white people, masterminded by Jewish people who secretly rule the world and are replacing white people in traditionally white countries with third world immigrants. Obviously, this theory is ridiculous. Third world peoples are coming to Europe and the US as refugees as a consequence of US imperialism, because our imperialist foreign policy has made life unlivable in those countries. White nations are the aggressor. Refugees are not the aggressor. Also, it should go without saying, but we are going to say it for clarity. Jewish people do not secretly rule the world. The white nationalist power system rules the world. Again, white nationalism plays the victim in order to blame actual victims, which is what this meme is all about. White victimization. In white nationalist logic, white people are pure, vulnerable, and innocent, even as white people inflict genocide, slavery, and colonialism on the majority of the world's people. White nationalism positions white people as helpless victims. Also note in this meme the co-optation of the rhetoric of the oppressed and appropriating it for white supremacist purposes. Next slide, please. The flip side of the logic that white people are pure, vulnerable, and innocent is that Black and brown people are dangerous, violent, and evil. It's us versus them politics. No conception of cooperation or collaboration. White nationalists inflate, twist, and straight up invent statistics to stir up fear against Black people and immigrants. I mean, check out this meme. We have a meme that says, USA crime statistics, Blacks killed by whites, 2%, Blacks killed by police, 1%, whites killed by police, 3%, whites killed by whites, 16%, whites killed by Blacks, 81%, Blacks killed by Blacks, 97%. And it's a picture of a Black person holding up a gun. Everything in this meme is fake. The stats are fake, the source is fake, but this fear-mongering leads to white nationalist violence, such as the Charleston church massacre. Dylan Roof was a voracious consumer of online white nationalist propaganda, like the fake statistics in this slide. Next slide, please. So, on one hand, when you have vulnerable, pure white people that you need to protect from danger, and on the other, risk of contamination from the dark, violent other, what do you need? You need a wall, borders, prisons, segregation, containment, gated communities. These are all hallmarks of a white nationalist society or culture. And on this slide, you can see a picture of a border wall on one side, and then a picture of a gated community on the other side that says stop private property. The language on the slide says borders, segregation, containment. This is why the Build the Wall slogan has been so powerful for Trump. It taps into these psychological frameworks. White is pure vulnerable on one side, dark violent other on the other side. And it does it just in 3 simple words. All right, and on that note, I'm gonna pass it off to Margaret.
Hi, my name is Margaret. I go by, I have she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with long red hair. I'm also wearing an APTP sweatshirt. Also want to lift up their work, especially they've been leaders in the defund the police movement, which is incredibly important to remember. I am going to be talking to you a little bit more about some white nationalist thinking. We're going to go a little bit deeper. So here on this slide, we have a chart of sorts that is going to help describe producerism. So you may have heard Nicole talk about who gets identified as a productive member of society. So producerism is a right-wing populist framework in which the world is divided up into 3 types of people. And they're here on this chart. So in the middle, we have the hardworking producers, people who make society run and produce the yield that others get to enjoy. In this framework, producers are usually coded as white working class and white middle class people. Then we move to the bottom of the chart to the so-called lazy, sinful, subversive parasites. These are the people who are a burden on the producers because they're either unable or unwilling to work and be producers themselves. These folks are usually coded as Black. So you can think of the welfare queen stereotype. That's a really good stereotype to look at when you're trying to understand producerism. And then at the top, we see the elite parasites. So these are the limousine liberals, elites, coastal elites. They're out of touch with the working class, and they are facilitating a transfer of wealth from the producer class to the sinful parasite class. In this framework, elites are often coded as Jewish. So for an example, think about all the George Soros conspiracies, that he's funding all this leftist movement, that he's the mastermind. And I want to make really clear, it's incredibly essential to understand that white nationalism cannot credit Black people or people of color with fighting for their own self-determination. So there's an old white nationalist narrative that Jewish people are secretly the brains behind Black struggle. So during the civil rights movement, for example, Jewish people who were following Black leadership and working in solidarity with Black freedom struggle were often characterized by white nationalists as outside agitators who were coming in and stirring up trouble. So it's super important to remember that framing, that white nationalists cannot conceive of Black genius, of Black leadership, and so they will do anything to hide that reality. We can also see how the producerist rhetoric is pervasive throughout our mainstream culture. So Nicole touched on it when we're looking at, COVID-19, who's going to get healthcare, who's seen as worthy of saving, right? But I want to give an example just as someone who has worked with county mental health systems for 2 decades. I've explicitly been instructed that the services that we're providing in these systems have the goal of making people productive. So for me as a therapist, the goal is to reduce the symptoms that impact someone's functioning. That's the exact language we use. So essentially you can make somebody who is a burden into a productive member of society. So this is everywhere. Like, this has seeped very deeply into mainstream American culture. Next slide, please. So another part of the thinking is scapegoating, right? And so white nationalists use, in white nationalist thinking, they use scapegoating as a substitute for a structural analysis. So for example, scapegoating immigrants instead of having like a structural analysis of why the economy doesn't work for most people. Oh, it must be, we have these illegal aliens, as it says in this picture, taking our jobs, right? Scapegoating also displaces the community's pain and rage toward the scapegoated group, which leads to immense violence and even genocide. So again, scapegoating takes that pain and rage that folks experience living under this system that doesn't, this economy that doesn't work for most people, and says these are the folks to blame, and then that leads to immense violence and genocide. And And the other piece that scapegoating does that's highly problematic, right, is that it prevents real solutions to real problems. So an example of that, on the right hand of the screen, there's a couple newspapers that talk about the war on drugs as the war on blacks, right? So the war on drugs really has been a war on the Black community and has actually done nothing to address the harm of addiction on our communities. And right now we see how scapegoating is preventing real solutions, where we are being told to blame China for the coronavirus. And blaming China does not actually help us deal with coronavirus, and it has actually increased anti-Asian rhetoric, anti-Asian attacks, anti-Asian racism. Next slide, please. So this is a slide that describes the natural moral order, right? So this slide is about Christian supremacy, patriarchy, and quote unquote divinely ordained hierarchy. So this one is particularly interesting to me. I was raised in a liberal Christian church, but I'm also a longtime queer activist in LGBTQIA and reproductive rights and justice struggles. So I've been fighting this thinking for a really long time without actually knowing that that's specifically what I was fighting, not really understanding the full extent of how this thinking shapes the arguments that the right wing and white nationalists make. So in white nationalist thinking, there is a natural moral order. So hierarchy is ordained by God, and equality itself is seen as perverted and evil. So I want to make that really clear. It's really vital to understand the structure in this thought, right? So we on the left are often talking about inequality, and we're like, inequality is bad. We should stop having inequality. This is something that is not good for our society. The right wing, the white nationalists are like, no, inequality is good. Inequality is ordained by God. And actually, you asking for equality itself is satanic and evil. So it's really important to know this, because there is no shared value system there, right? And there's no way to appeal to folks who are steeped in this way of thinking, right? There's no common ground there. Next slide, please. So we're gonna watch this this ad right now. This is an ad for Trump, and just as you're watching it, see how many examples of the white supremacy logic we just talked about can you spot in this ad, and then share that in the chat.
Drugs, terrorists, violent criminals, and child traffickers trying to enter our country. But Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer care more about the radical left than keeping us safe. The consequences? Drug deaths, violent murder, gang violence. We must not allow it. Every country defends their borders. President Trump wants to defend ours. The Democrats must stop playing politics and support real border security now.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message. Liberals care more about illegal immigrants than they do about our own citizens. It's time to put America first.
All right, I see someone said I lost count already. Yeah, so scapegoating, right? Reference to elites, borders, segregation, containment. There's fear, defending borders, fear of outside, anti-equality. Any other things that folks saw? Putting whites first, right? Moral hierarchy. Any other things? Safe is in, immoral is out, anti-Semitism, right, Nicole? Whites, women needed protection, right? Other, defer responsibility, right? Other countries do this. Scarcity as a need for close borders, putting whites first because every nation does it. Yeah, any other, right? Trump representing the head of the hierarchy. Immigrants only come from Mexico. Fear, shame, acting like an authority. Yeah. Us versus them. Yep, that was a big one. Thanks, Kelsey. Yeah. Yeah, so like I think Megan was the one who said at the beginning, there's so many, you lose count, right? Like I think every utterance in that ad we could find in any of these white supremacist thinking and logic. So yeah, it's very present. It's present all through our country. It's present in the highest power, right? Playing on fear of scarcity. Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to take a deep breath. And then we're going to move on. I'm going to have Nicole hand it over to Nicole next.
Okay, so here is a little map of the modern day white nationalist movement. We're not going to get into all these different subgroups. Again, we could do a whole 2 hours on each one. But just want you to get a little bit of the lay of the land here. So I want to draw your attention to the top right corner, where we see rich white nationalists with a long-term strategy. You see all these old white men in suits at the American Renaissance Conference, which is a white nationalist conference that's funded by very rich people. So one point we really want to make is that often, you know, white supremacists are painted in the kind of popular understanding as ignorant, unsophisticated, poor and working class white people. And that is inaccurate. There are very, very, very wealthy interests who are funding think tanks, 50-year plans and strategies, conferences, journals, media companies, electoral campaigns. That is really what's driving this movement. It is people who have a financial interest in maintaining this system and advancing this ideology. Let's see, what else to say about this slide? There's all these folks, right? Like there's the neo-Nazi parties. They have historically needed to like have their rallies out in the woods because Nazis aren't really looked kindly upon in this country. Nazi is kind of like a catch-all word that we often use for enemy. But these groups have been growing in popularity and recruiting more folks. The internet has definitely been weaponized by the white nationalist movement. There's a ton of white nationalist propaganda on the internet. That's a front where we do have to fight. Misogyny is being used as a recruitment tool. They're getting a lot of new members by tapping into misogyny and resentment against women. Ex-military and current military folks are part of these patriot militias all around the country. And yeah, cops, we said it, cops are part of the white nationalist movement, absolutely. You know, policing began as runaway slave patrols. Today, police exist to protect property. And this image you see here was from a recent action in San Francisco where some unhoused women took over a vacant home. And these police all showed up in Blue Lives Matter flag masks. It's just a perfect example of how deeply the policing agencies are connected to the white nationalist movement. We can definitely say in the 6 years that we've been active counter-organizing against the alt-right and white nationalism that the police are absolutely collaborating and cooperating with those groups. We've seen that at every step of the way. There's a growing fascist culture in Silicon Valley. Peter Thiel is somebody to look into if you're interested in that. And then this phenomenon of the alt-right opportunists and fame seekers. So these folks that are really using kind of the edginess and the controversy of alt-right style white nationalism to make a name for themselves, to get famous, to get book deals. There's a whole generation of activists who are basically exploiting that controversy for fame, but they're also mainstreaming a lot of the logic and a lot of the talking points. And they also are, in some cases, really actually connecting and collaborating with some of the neo-Nazi parties and gangs. And I would really put Trump, kind of right there in the middle between those opportunists and the fame seekers and the rich white nationalists with the strategy. We definitely saw that during the election. He got a lot of press by saying these white nationalist things, by doing these white nationalist dog whistles like the white power sign. And he's also deeply connected to folks like Steve Bannon, people who are very wealthy and who are deeply ideologically committed to white supremacy. And so on the last slide, we showed that Nazi rally that happened in the middle of the woods. In 2017, there was this push for neo-Nazi groups to be able to start having public rallies. So they formed this coalition between the old school white nationalist groups and gangs, the kind of alt-right and the alt-light, and Trump supporters to do these free speech rallies. And the culmination of this free speech rally tactic was supposed to take place in Charlottesville in 2017. And this is a photo from that day. This is a photo of Vanguard America, which was a neo-Nazi group. They, as you can see, they wear uniforms, khaki pants, white polo shirts. They have these shields with their logo on it. And right there in the middle is James Fields, who is the man who drove this vehicle into a crowd of counter-protesters, anti-fascist protesters, the day of that rally, hurting a lot of people and murdering Heather Heyer, who was a 32-year-old woman who was there to speak out against white nationalism that day. And so what was intended to be this kind of like new era of white nationalism, where now they would have public rallies in every city in America, there was this huge backlash because of this murder. Vanguard America, vehemently denied that James Field was a member, even though there was all this evidence that he was totally rolling with them. And they actually dissolved and completely rebranded themselves, as did a lot of the groups that were part of Unite the Right in Charlottesville. So Vanguard America dissolved and rebranded itself as Patriot Front. And this is from one of their leaders. He told their base, "What you want is to build public sympathy with our constituents, straight white people of good moral character, without compromising our beliefs. We are American fascists, but we don't present ourselves as 1930s Germans, Klansmen, or prison gangs." So this is strategic. This is a good strategic move on their part. They are ideologically committed neo-Nazis. Like, they do believe that there's a Jewish conspiracy to rule the world, but they have learned to not lead with that, and to really hearken back to the American heritage and the legacy of American fascism, which absolutely was and has been fascism, right? The slaughter and genocide of indigenous people of this country is fascism. The enslavement of Africans is fascism. And so that's now what they're really promoting. Let's see. Yeah, just another example of this kind of like rebranding to be more accessible to the average white person is I know people have heard people saying things like White Lives Matter. The organization that's called White Lives Matter was started by a homemaker in Tennessee who also happens to be a leader in the National Socialist Movement's women's division. So like National Socialist Movement is a neo-Nazi group. She's a leader of their women's division. She started White Lives Matter. They would swear up and down we're not Nazis, we just believe that white lives matter, but like they're totally Nazis. I'm gonna hand it to Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Nicole. My name is Sarah. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with brown hair and a ponytail, wearing a black t-shirt and glasses. So we're going to shift now to talking about the Reopen America movement. The Reopen America movement is producerism at work. We heard Margaret a couple of slides ago explaining the complexities of producerism, where we've got the elite parasites at the top, the producers in the middle, and then the lazy parasites at the bottom. And so shelter in place has been really triggering for the producerist crowd because these folks find meaning in life through production. So being told to stay home from work is really traumatic. From their perspective, the oppressive elites are forcing producers to stay home, while the, quote, parasitic underclass are being encouraged to be lazy and sinful by being discouraged from working. So shelter in place is really messing with this value system. And I want to be clear that the is the language of this movement, not my language. And then beyond producerism, the Reopen America crowd seems to really genuinely believe that mask mandates and other public health policies are encroaching on their freedom. And part of that is definitely rooted in anti-China sentiment. These folks believe that the virus is a hoax. They believe that China intentionally created the virus and then unleashed it. And as a result of that, the restrictions on the US economy could make them slaves to the Chinese government. So we're seeing a lot of scapegoating right now. So I want to take a closer look at the image on this slide. What do you notice about this image? What messages are being deployed here? Go ahead and take a closer look and share what you're seeing in the chat. Just to describe the image a little bit, it's of a rally. I believe this is in Sacramento, the Reopen California rally. See a lot of signs. There's an American flag. There's a Trump 2020 sign here. Yeah, a lot of messages of scarcity is what I'm seeing in the chat. A lot of rhetoric around choice and rights, absolutely. Yeah, very casual death happens. The Civil War starts today, that's right. That's right. So we're seeing a lot of co-optation of rhetoric. Truth matters, a lot of rhetoric around choice. The war is coming, the Civil War is coming. Pretty scary stuff. So I think another relevant point here is that, as I think we highlighted earlier in the presentation, people love to think of California as being really progressive. And to some extent, there's truth to that. And to note that California has the 4th highest number of organized white nationalist groups in the country. Yeah. Next slide, please. All right, so this slide has images of the Freedom Angels. The Freedom Angels are a right-wing anti-vaccine group that's been active in California over the last couple of years. And right now, they're the lead spokespeople for the Reopen California movement. CRCA members first saw this group at the Capitol. It's our assessment that this group is mostly white women, as you can see on slides, sort of draped in the American flag, wearing a lot of white. And we heard them chanting a lot about no segregation, no discrimination. And as you can see on the central image in the slide, they're also, that particular slide is of white women holding a banner that states, "This is the new civil rights movement." And so what we're seeing here is a co-optation of language that's been successful in Black movements. In the upper right-hand corner of this slide, you'll see an image of the flyer that they were distributing, which is hella racist. Basically, they were accusing this group of California senators who sponsored the measles vaccine bill they were accusing them of being infiltrators on behalf of China. And so again, we're seeing a lot of this anti-China sentiment and scapegoating. And so they're also kind of playing around with harmful rhetoric about white women's innocence juxtaposed against the Chinese other. We also saw that they had chartered buses and catered food. So we're not sure who's funding the Freedom Angels because they're not transparent about that, but they're registered as a tax-exempt religious organization. See in the chat, could you repeat their name, please? This is the Freedom Angels. Next slide, please. So a crucial component of understanding white nationalist organizations is funding. Follow the money, always follow the money. And the Reopen America group is constructed to look like a grassroots movement, but they're actually funded by corporate money. So funded by the Dorr brothers, the Koch brothers, the DeVos family. And so this image or perception that they're grassroots creates the political cover that they need to basically do what we're seeing now, calling for like the premature reopening of the economy and cutting unemployment benefits and cutting other economic relief programs that allow people to stay home. And so this is obviously leading to the next wave of the virus. We're seeing that play out right now. But because of that grassroots cover, they can make claims like, we're just listening to the people, we're giving the people what they want. And it's really harmful. So, next slide. And speaking of funding, it's important to notice the details. The Reopen California and Michigan domains, among others, are owned by the same person who owns the domain for the My Militia networks. This is not a coincidence or an accident. And if you're not familiar with the My Militia network, it's exactly what it sounds like, really. It's a database of militarized people, a database of militarized groups. They're associated with the 3 Percenters, which is a right-wing paramilitary group. And they offer a catalog of existing militias, and they promote a program for setting up a militia in every telephone area code. So the Reopen America movements are essentially a coalition of corporate funding and paramilitary groups, and they're working together, and that is a bad sign. It probably goes without saying, but these folks are dangerous. In 2017, My Militia site user Michael Harry and other members of his Illinois-based militia bombed a mosque in Bloomington, Minnesota, and they plotted to do the same to a second mosque in Champaign, Illinois. So we need to take these folks seriously. Back to you, Nicole.
Now we're going to look at the tactics that this modern day movement is using to advance their agenda. And we call this the trolling to terrorism continuum, because it's the continuum, and it's kind of like, where are we on that continuum at any given point? So people have probably heard the term trolling. It started on the internet. People say, don't feed the trolls, don't read the comments. Trolling is basically just antisocial, bad faith engagement that's designed to provoke an emotional reaction and or a fight. And so I think you all probably know what this means by now, but it's willful misunderstanding, willful, like, people call it shit posting. Just saying things to get people upset and to get people to fight or to divide people against each other. And people often say that the best tactic to use when you're dealing with the troll is to ignore them, because what they are getting out of this tactic is they're getting that reaction and that attention. And a lot of times that's true. We've seen this tactic a lot in the pandemic, right? If people have heard about Zoom bombing, totally a trolling tactic that comes from the white nationalist corner of the internet. Another tactic that the alt-right uses a lot is doxing. So doxing is when somebody's private information, private identity, their legal name, their home address, their cell phone number, and other information that can be used to harm them gets published on the internet with the intention of mobilizing people to commit that harm. So at the top of this slide, you see these are the red elephants. They're a live streamer, and they go out into real life and film basically trolling people in real life, trying to get people upset, trying to provoke a fight. And then their live stream video is going to all these tens of thousands of folks online who will then track down, whoever the target is and try to find out who they are, their name, their home address, where they work, so they can terrorize that person. It's like an army of online trolls. They actually have some infrastructure, like they have a site where people can post bounties. Like I'll pay $5,000 to anyone who can figure out, the woman in this picture, what's her full name and her home address and where does she work. So this is a major tactic that they use. Historically, terrorism has been the main tactic that's used to advance white nationalism, and terrorism is defined as the use of violence and intimidation, especially in pursuit of a political agenda. And white nationalists are really the original terrorists, because if you think about it, white people are a tiny minority on the planet. So in order to dominate the entire planet as a tiny minority, you have to use a ton of violence. And that's what white nationalism has done. That's how white nationalism has operated since its inception. And we see that continuing into the modern day movement. One particular tactic we want to speak about is the lone wolf attack, the so-called lone wolf attack. This term was popularized by white supremacist leaders in the 1990s. So white supremacist leaders actually advocated for individual, like one-man cell underground activity, as opposed to doing like above ground membership organizations. Basically because above ground organizations are more vulnerable to repression, either from the state or from anti-fascist forces. So they envisioned individual warriors acting alone or in small groups to attack the government and other targets in daily anonymous acts. So very critical to understand that these lone wolf attacks, like Dylann Roof, are not isolated. They're not apolitical. They're not the acts of a quote unquote mentally ill person. They are an articulated piece of the white nationalist movement strategy. I'll pass this back to Sarah now.
Yeah, thanks. So we're going to continue talking about tactics, but we're going to do that by reviewing some examples of white nationalist activity and tactics that we're seeing right now in the Bay Area. So this image on the screen is the home of the last Black family left in a particular block of East Oakland. And it was spray painted with "All Lives Matter," as you can see, in the middle of the night. So this happened not even 2 weeks ago, in the aftermath of the George Floyd rebellions. And as Nicole just explained, saying the phrase "all lives matter" is trolling. They know what Black Lives Matter means, and they're trolling. So basically they're trying to provoke an emotional response, start a fight that makes anti-racists look bad, and that serves to deepen divisions and polarize people against the Black Lives Matter movement. So they get to say things like, "These crazy people get mad when you say all lives matter. They're the real racists." And to instigate these kinds of conversations, white nationalists use graffiti as a tactic. In this particular instance, do you think that this spray painting, this phrase, is trolling or terrorism? Imagine how it would feel if you were the only Black family on the block, and you walk out of your house in the morning and see this. What do you think? If you have thoughts about that, please share them with us in the chat. Yeah, terrorism. Next slide, please. So this is something that Patriot Front has been doing a lot in the Bay Area. As a reminder, Patriot Front is that rebranded organization that the Charlottesville murderer belonged to. And what we're looking at here is an image of flyers and stickers in a public parking lot. So we've been seeing these stickers going up in the DSA office in North Oakland and around Lake Merritt. They've also been dropping banners with slogans like, quote, "Reclaim America," and, quote, "Send the invaders back," over the Bay Bridge. Putting up stickers, doing banner drops, hanging posters and flyers is part of these organizations' membership process. It's a way to prove that they're down with the group. And like graffiti, these flyers and posters and stickers are a way to instigate and polarize. So if you see a sticker or flyer like this, take it down or cover it up. Try and do something if that's an option available to you. We don't actually recommend like taking a photo and sharing this on social media or anything. We're not trying to promote their like quote activism. They love attention and we're not trying to give it to them, but we definitely don't want to keep these messages out in the community. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk now about the Boogaloo Boys. Boogaloo is a made-up term that basically means a race war. The Boogaloo Boys are people who want to help bring about a second American Civil War for the purpose of reestablishing American fascism and white nationalism. So their goal is to heighten racial tensions to incite a civil war. This idea has primarily been propagated online through memes and, quote, jokes. But it constitutes the scripted violence that Nicole was talking about with like the lone wolf attacks. Next slide, please. So this is an image of Stephen Carrillo, who is an active duty member of an elite Air Force unit who used the George Floyd rebellion as political cover to attack law enforcement. He murdered a Federal Protective Services officer in Oakland on May 29th while a Black Lives Matter demonstration was happening just down the street. Boogaloo patches and images and slogans were found inside the van that was used to commit the murder when Carrillo was later arrested. So this is an accelerationist tactic designed to turn the public against the movement for Black lives. To create the justification for the criminalization of that movement. So we want to be clear, this is a tactic, and the goal is to repress our movements. So sure enough, right away, we saw news pundits who were really quick to claim that this officer was, quote, murdered by rioters. And Trump then repeated this claim in a speech on June 1st, saying, quote, a federal officer in California, an African-American enforcement hero, was shot and killed. These are not acts of peaceful protests. These are acts of domestic terror, end quote. So that murder had a serious impact on protesters because it happened during the heightened moment of the protests. And it was used as justification for repression. So there's a lawsuit happening currently that Community Ready Corps and the Anti-Police Terror Project is filing against the city because the police terror that occurred during that weekend of protest, and still to this day, is basically the city is doubling down on the murder committed by someone completely unrelated to the protest as a reason to justify use of force. Next slide, please. So finally, this isn't exactly a local policy, but it definitely has local ramifications, and policy is yet another tactic used by white nationalists to move their agenda forward. On Monday, Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials, ICE, said that international students who are taking classes entirely online this fall at university will not be able to stay in the US. And so that means they either won't be allowed to enter the US or they will be deported. So their visa status will actually be altered if the coursework is conducted fully online, which is in most cases completely out of the hands of these students. And or like we're in the middle of a pandemic and we're actively deporting people, not we, ICE. So again, this is completely out of the students' hands. This is 100% white nationalist policy. They are using the COVID crisis to expel non-US born students from the country and putting their health and safety at risk by doing so. That's fucked up. Like, can't have a better way to put that. And this is yet another example of the government using the crisis to advance their agenda. They've been wanting to deport tens of thousands of people, and this is the perfect cover to do so. And it's trash. So I'll pass it off to Margaret now.
Thanks, Sarah. So why are we as white people educating ourselves about white nationalist thinking and tactics? It's because we as white people have a responsibility to proactively address white nationalist organizing that's happening in our communities. The slide shows a couple of flyers, newspapers, things, slogans that say "Stop the Klan," "No KKK," "No Fascist USA." Our prime objective is to prevent and intervene against racist violence, harassment, and intimidation, and to undermine white nationalists' ability to recruit. As Nicole and other folks have mentioned, you know, fascism, one fascist is ugly, a group of fascists is very dangerous. So we are trying to stop that in its tracks. Next slide, please. So how do we do intervention? Intervention is one of the 5 methods. And one way to do that is prevention. Prevention is the best intervention. So you've probably heard the phrase, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure." This is true here too. As a white anti-racist, we proactively take responsibility for preventing racist harm, and we work to heighten our awareness of white supremacy and how it is at play in our environment. That's what we're doing today. This means we have to learn to see the things our privilege hides from us. We learn to become aware of quote unquote pre-assault indicators and take proactive steps to address potential white supremacist threats. We're going to look at pre-assault indicators in the next slide. Next slide. Okay, cool. So some pre-assault indicators are white nationalist symbols and signals. So if we heighten our awareness and we learn about these symbols and signals, then we can spot them and keep an eye on the people who are using them. So a lot of these folks really like uniforms. That's really helpful to us. So let's look at some of the uniforms they like. So Patriot Front, which again, that is the rebranded Vanguard America, which was neo-Nazis and responsible for the killing of Hare through one of their members. Now they're the Patriot Front. They like to wear khaki pants, white polo shirts, blue or black zip-up windbreakers with hoods, white face masks with American flag imagery, and beige hats with Patriot Front logo. So there's pictures of them at the top of this slide and top left as well. Next, we have the Proud Boys here. Proud Boys like their Fred Perry black polo shirts with the gold trim and the insignia. So when you see one of those shirts, that is a red flag. That person is probably a Proud Boy. MAGA hats, right? Definitely a pre-assault indicator. You really got to watch these motherfuckers when they come around. They're looking to incite. And then Boogaloo, they enjoy wearing Hawaiian shirts and also camo gear. I was actually at the beach yesterday, and there's a white man wearing a Hawaiian shirt with camo shorts, and I was like, what's happening here? I don't know if he was part of Boogaloo, but it definitely made my beach experience a little less restful. All right, next slide, please. All right, symbols. So many symbols. All right, 1488 is, these are symbolic numbers. Look out for these. You see these? This is a big red flag. We're not going to explain what they are. If you're curious, you can look it up, but we don't want to, again, highlight neo-Nazi symbols and language in this webinar or ever. Then we've got the 3 percenters. That's next here, the Roman numeral 3 surrounded by the white stars. Oath keepers. These are both hard right militia groups who sometimes associate, collaborate with, and provide muscle for outright white nationalist organizations. Notice in the next right-hand corner, this is the Patriot Front logo. There's also another one down in the second row. These have been, you want to look out for these stickers. They've been going up around the Bay Area, as Sarah showed in her slide earlier, also including at Lake Merritt. The one on the second row has an eagle logo, which is based off of Nazi insignia. Folks may also be aware that the Trump campaign is using a very similar logo for some of their materials. So that is, again, huge red flag. This green flag to the right of the Patriot Front is what's known as the Keck flag. You know, I think Sarah talked a little bit about the use of joking, irony, plausible deniability, all that sort of thing. So this Keck flag is a spoof, quote unquote spoof of the Nazi flag, and it's for a made up white supremacist nation. And then Blue Lives Matter. Nicole showed us some police wearing those before. That's definitely a red flag for white nationalism. Again, the OK sign, right? So this has become a white power symbol, right? The hand makes a W and a P. So pay a lot of attention. Again, what you see is when folks get called out for this, they use, again, plausible deniability and say that's not what I was doing, but it is definitely what they're doing. They're fully signaling. Red elephants, this next picture of the red elephant with the flag on it, they're live streamers. They dox people, so watch out for that, watch out for them. We're gonna see a little bit later in this presentation some action from the red elephant. So just, yeah, pay attention to them. And then there's some more traditional white power symbols in the lower right-hand corner. So those are definitely a red flag. All right, next slide, please. So intervention is political, not just physical. So this is a picture of Richard Spencer being punched by someone who did not want him to be interviewed by CNN, right? So this is a political, even though this is a physical intervention, it was political in nature. So it's important to remember, like, solid political intervention will more often than not make physical intervention unnecessary, but physical intervention can be political in nature as well. So by political, what we mean is we're dealing with power. So Richard Spencer was trying to start a national conversation about whether or not we should engage in quote unquote peaceful ethnic cleansing, unquote, right? Whatever the fuck that means. But instead, what we had was, because of this punch that happened on mainstream media, we had a national conversation about whether or not Nazis should get punched on sight. That is a political intervention. It's not just, again, who can hit the hardest, right? It's also about who can change the narrative. Intervention is a dynamic process. There's no one cookie cutter tactic that will be effective in every situation under all conditions. As anti-racists, we need to learn how to be as proactive and strategic as possible and to use all available tools to combat white supremacy. I'm going to talk about an example of a simple political intervention, and I want to call out Juno, who's here, who was a part of this intervention. So in 2017, during Fight the Right, there's a group of us comrades who were just there. And one of the things that we ended up doing was taking out whistles. And anytime the media would approach one of the alt-right, far-right, white nationalist leaders to try and interview them, we would just go up behind them and start blowing our whistles as loudly as possible. That created feedback, that created conditions in which nobody could hear what the person was saying. Lots of media folks got really frustrated. They got frustrated with us, but we're like, we're just blowing our whistles. And they ended up, leaving or, being like, okay, forget it. I'm not going to try and get this story. So it was a political intervention in which what we were seeing a lot was the mainstream media flocking to these folks and publishing their narratives over and over again. So by disrupting that, we were able to change the narrative, to disrupt the narrative in just a small way. So there's lots of different ways to do that. But it's important to remember that white supremacy is systemic and structural, and that grassroots racist vigilantes are both a symptom of and surrogates for that system, right? So again, remember primary predators and secondary predators. The grassroots racist vigilantes, they're both a symptom of and surrogates for the white supremacist system that we have here. In addition to addressing racist vigilante activity, our movement must increase our collective capacity to intervene against the system itself. Next slide, please. I want to talk about revolutionary discipline. This is a huge part of the principle of intervention. Anti-racist militancy requires revolutionary discipline. History shows that the state will always attempt to characterize anti-racist community defense as violent. We have a responsibility as white people practicing intervention to do our part to minimize the state's ability to criminalize and repress our comrades by practicing revolutionary discipline in both action and speech. Real struggle in real time is complex and nuanced, and it has real consequences. We won't always all agree on tactics, but one point of unity is clear. We stand for the people's right to dissent, and we stand against the criminalization of dissent. We must love and protect each other. So to practice a revolutionary discipline, we must ask ourselves the following questions when engaging in the intervention method. Is our intervention creating real protection, or is our intervention creating more danger? Is our intervention really about preventing, addressing harm? Or is it a way to satisfy an emotional need of ours? And who are we accountable to? And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey.
Thanks, Margaret. So Margaret just walked through the components of intervention, and now we're going to look at an example of it in real time, in practice, by Community Ready Corps.
This is the alleged Antifa / protester meetup. And we're gonna go see if we control some people here.
What's the situation? How you guys doing?
Hi, how you doing?
What organization you with?
We're doing a documentary.
Okay, about what?
About the protests that are going on this week.
What organization are you with?
We're with the Danish Broadcasting System.
Okay.
And so
pro-fascists or anti-fascists?
We're neutral.
Neutral?
Neutral.
All right. Neutral. It's hard to be neutral in this environment,
yes,
but
sir.
hey, you're not coming here to start shit though, right?
Oh, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
All right.
Got a professional camera here.
Cameras are deceptive.
All right.
All right, we're all friends though, right?
Cameras are allowed?
Right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, we're in public space.
They allow
Y'all
us?
not here to dox people, right?
Oh, not at all. What is
All right,
it?
so
I don't even know
all
what
of this
dox.
is going to be friendly media.
Yeah, of course.
None
What
of
is?
this stuff is going to go out death threats and all
No,
that kind of stuff, right?
we're a huge,
Right?
we're a huge public company and
Huge public company. What's the name of it again?
in Danish. Go ahead, tell
Danish
'em.
company, right?
Yeah, Danish
All right.
company, right?
So this is not doxing material.
No, not at all.
right?
Not at all.
No death threats and none of that's going to come.
I don't even know what doxing means.
You got to know what doxing means. That's suspicious
it
if you
is.
say you don't know what it means.
Is that an American thing or?
Yeah.
That's an American thing?
See, I just don't believe that.
Okay, well,
I don't believe you don't know what doxing is, but you all are not here to cause ruckus, right?
No, not at all.
Cause any problems.
Like
right?
I said, we're just peaceful.
My face is not going to end up on some right-wing site
We're
talking
peaceful.
about I'm a terrorist, right?
We're peaceful here.
All right.
And what is this gathering about here?
It's a gathering against white supremacy and fascism.
Got it. Got it. And are you going to the Milo thing tomorrow as well?
I don't know. Is it even going to happen?
We've been informed that people are watching your stream, and you are a part of the alt-right phenomenon. You are a part of the alt-right dynamics.
I
That's what we've
don't
been
even
informed.
know what that.
We've been informed that you all are not friendly media.
We are friendly media.
Right?
Yeah, we are friendly media. We're not here.
Can we check in on the feed? What's the stream right now? What's the live stream?
Right now we have the.
So there are two different things.
Okay, this is live streaming.
This is a live stream, and this is a film.
We're doing
Okay, what is this
Right.
live stream? Can somebody check it out?
But why are we not allowed to be? I don't.
Right, because
understand
we've
why-
been told by people who've done a lot of research and information that this is not necessarily friendly media.
We haven't caused any problems.
I know, but once again, one of the things that this group of people has been combating is doxing.
We are not here to dox.
Film and media
We're
that
not
goes
here
out in order to put
hurt-
out people's home addresses.
Oh,
death
no,
threats to
no,
their
no,
children,
no,
things
no,
of that
no,
nature.
no,
So
no.
we just want to be clear.
No, we
right?
are definitely
We know
not.
who this media is, but we're not clear on who you all are.
We are definitely not here to put out
Okay.
anyone's
So
home
no
address.
death threats, no unfriendly.
Swear to God.
Right?
Swear to God.
So none of this will result in people's children's being put on
course not.
names,
Of course
mothers
not.
and parents and houses
Definitely
and things
not.
of that nature.
Definitely not.
None of this will result in
Definitely
that.
not.
Okay,
Definitely
all right. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. I am hot in this. I'm steaming in this sweatshirt here. And so that is the deal with that. Waiting on these guys here. We are completely peaceful here, sir.
Yeah, that's it. That's what we
Yes,
just
sir.
want to make sure everybody's
Yes, sir.
safe. That's it. Before, during, and after the march, right?
Of course.
So I was just informed that Milo canceled the press conference at 2.
He canceled the. Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we did find the feed.
Okay.
Red Elephant, right?
Yes, sir.
Definitely pro-fascist.
I'm not pro-fascist.
Definitely pro-fascist. Red Elephant is a pro-fascist
I
site.
am not pro-fascist.
Oh, come on now.
I am not
Red
pro-fascist.
Elephant.
I am with the Red Elephant.
Oh, right. That is definitely not an
We're
anti.
also with the
That's
Danish
definitely not a
broadcasting.
friendly.
I am friendly. I am not causing any harm to anyone.
No. We didn't say violent.
Right.
It's two different things. Unfriendly and violent are two different things. So we're not claiming that you're violent.
Okay.
But we are claiming that the Red Elephant can be the catalyst for violence on our people.
Definitely not.
Okay. I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, we know that it's unfriendly media. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
So I ask you once again, this won't result in any doxing,
I already said.
any terrorist threats,
I already said no.
anybody's families being
I have
called
never.
out?
I have
All
never
right, thank you,
partaken
sir.
in any of
Thank
that. See, that's my cue. That's definitely my cue.
So he already told me that they're not here to dox anybody, that they're not here to be the
Definitely not.
pathway to harm. That's what he told me. They're
Definitely
good.
not.
So he's friendly. All right.
I am not a violent person at all.
Who are you with?
Yeah, me too.
Who are you
It's
with?
like way too.
What press are you with? I've seen you at some court dates. Yes, sir. Eric Clancy's court date.
This guy's going around and pointing at me and talking to people, so let me go see if I can get these guys to. I feel like everyone knows who I am right now. Yeah, so that guy's going around telling everyone who I am. I told you. We're gonna go see if we control some people here.
All right. So what principles did you notice get practiced? Why was this intervention effective? Share your thoughts in the chat. And I will read them out loud. Disciplined. Refusing to engage in political discussion. The dude was consistent. Dude meaning Turha. Community is organized, persistent, following up. Got in him for not giving up. Reframing. They kept him constantly off base and unfocused. Disrupting his narrative of neutrality. Not violent yet persistent. Using specific language. Boundaries. Changing the narrative. Sticking to basic principles and argument. Exposed him without using violence. Any other thoughts? Community had done its homework. Naming the behavior. Loud, booming voice helpful. Made other people aware of the danger, building his discomfort through exposure. Yeah, so by the end of that, everyone who was there knew that this guy was in the red elephant and not to interact with him. That is some effective intervention. He had to leave. Clarifying unfriendly is not violent. Yeah, made the red elephant guy feel surrounded by people who are united. Aware of content wars. Repeating same questions, especially when responses were not believable. Yeah, so this video shows like the effectiveness of really putting out everything on the table. I mean, he started off with, are you pro-fascist or anti-fascist? That was the first question he asked. And are you here to dox people? So he asked them right off the bat, and they were forced to answer the question. Any other thoughts? Yep, repeating the same questions. Yeah. All right, so yeah, that was Turha from Community Ready Corps showing us how to effectively intervene when white nationalists try to show up. Yeah. Next slide. All right, so another principle of the 5 methods is education. And we just did education on this webinar. So you're good to go. Just kidding. It's a daily practice. But please share this webinar, share it with the folks you know, like share this knowledge. And sign up for our 5 methods bootcamp where we will continue to practice education and dig deeper, and folks will talk about that more later. Next slide, please. All right, and the other another method is organization. Raise your hand if after listening to 2 hours about white nationalists, you're feeling like the last thing you want to do is organize other white people. Just kidding. I can't. Oh, someone raised their hand. Thank you. Yeah, same. But you know, if we don't do it, who will? We need to strategically target specific groups within the white community to polarize them against the alt-right. So this slide has pictures of 3 specific groups we want to speak to. We've got a picture of white evangelicals, we have a picture of some white women, and we have a picture of the alienated and angry young white men in our country, one of them, Dylan Roof. So white evangelicals. Historically, white Christians have been used by the white nationalist movement, and the religious right is a big force in this country. But Christians are also not a big fan of mass shootings. So we think they could be winnable. Let's call them in. If you're connected to this group, definitely consider how you can get involved in organizing them. White women. This one hits close to home since I am also a white woman. And I saw a lot of us white women at the Women's March. Yes, I just shared that I went. But 53% of us still voted for Trump. So we've got some work to do. And for white women, it's a huge weakness for the white nationalist movement that they are misogynist. They use misogyny as a recruitment tool for bringing in white men. So there's a wedge there, and we got to deepen it. And then lastly, the young, angry, alienated white men in our lives, the Dylan Roofs of the world. You know, we're probably all connected to someone like that in some capacity. And if we're not willing to engage and organize someone like him, what do we expect to happen? Every white person we don't organize is a white person we're offering up to white nationalists. I'll leave you with that. Off to Nicole.
Keep forgetting to unmute. Another one of the 5 methods to divest white power and weaponize white privilege is contribution, not control. And what we want to talk about in regards to combating white nationalism is that the best way, and maybe the only way, to defeat white nationalism is to build a broad coalition across many different types of people. You know, the white nationalist movement hates and harms so many of us. They hate Black people, they hate immigrants, they hate disabled people, they hate women, they hate queer people, they hate trans people. If we all band together, we can totally win, and that's what we have to do. And in our experience, often like the way that white people show up in social movements and in those coalitions can be a liability for building that strong coalition. When we show up in like a controlling way that's actually persistently reestablishing white supremacy, even in an anti-racist space, people don't want to organize with us and they leave. And so we really have to get this contribution, not control thing down so that we can help build strong anti-racist and anti-fascist coalitions and not be the reason that those coalitions fall apart. Last of the 5 methods that's very, very important is divestment. So this is about returning the stolen and hoarded resources, the land, the wealth, the power back to the communities that it was stolen from. White people have disproportionate access to wealth, and so it's on us to divest it. Like we said earlier in the presentation, the Kellogg company behind the cereals was one of the major funders of the eugenics movement, and that really, like, they were the ones that established the, quote, Race Betterment Foundation. And it was that money that created the studies, the journals, the legislation that really like made eugenics this huge worldwide movement. And so for us as anti-racists, like, I think a lot of us, when we think about giving money, we tend to want to give money to like help people. We want to give directly to like direct services or to just like immediate relief. And I think we need to kind of learn from the right wing that we have to actually invest in strategy and infrastructure for building a movement that can win so that that relief isn't necessary anymore. And so I definitely want to really strongly plug donating to the Black Solidarity Fund, which is a fund that Community Ready Corps created to fund what's called the Black Solidarity Agenda, which is a really visionary, brilliant political document about creating alternative systems outside of white nationalism to really serve the people's needs. You should check out that agenda. It's on blacksolidarity.org, and you can also donate on that site. I donate every month because as an anti-racist and as someone who wants to defeat the white nationalist movement, Community Ready Corps' work has been critical in pushing back. I mean, they've been really, really important leaders in stopping fascists from organizing in the Bay Area, and also, yeah, doing a lot of other really important work. So please do divest. Check out blacksolidarity.org and sign up to give monthly if you can. Okay. We are done here. So I'm going to pass it back to Sarah for announcements and a closing.
Thanks, Nicole. This is heavy stuff. So maybe let's just take a moment, take a few deep breaths. I could use them. Meanwhile, I do want to talk to you about 2 events that are coming up that we really want to encourage you to attend with us. The first is next Saturday. We'll be having a phone bank. So that's next Saturday, July 18th from 9 to 1 Pacific time. And we'll be phone banking our own networks to raise money for Community Ready Corps' Solidarity Fund. That's the fund that you just heard Nicole talk about. This is the first fund of its kind in the US. It's amazing work, and phone banking and fundraising is a great way to support that work. So please join us. We'll put some information in the chat linking to a Facebook event with more information about the phone bank. The second opportunity I want to talk about is the 5 Methods Bootcamp, which I believe Kelsey mentioned briefly earlier. So this is a bootcamp. It's a 7-session training series that does a deep dive into these 5 methods that we introduced today. And it's designed to deepen your capacity to fight white supremacy. And I'm going to assume that's why we're all here. So we want to be working with you to continue developing our anti-racist leadership and organizing skills, because this shit is important. And as Kelsey said, any white person that we are not actively organizing, we're offering up to these horrible movements that we talked about today. So also information in the chat about how to fill out our interest form. We would love to have you join us for this training series. All right, so to close us out, I would love to know one thing that you're taking away from this webinar. So please share with us in the chat. If you're on Zoom, to all panelists and attendees, let us know one main takeaway that you have for today. If you're joining us on Facebook Live, go ahead and just throw that into the comment section. We want to know your takeaways. And I also want to just thank you so much for being here. This is one of my favorite ways to spend Saturday, and I hope you're learning. So let us know. Anything else that any of the other panelists want to add? And let us know what you're learning. Can't wait to call our communities together. Right on.
I do want to say, Sarah, this is Katie again. Hey, y'all. Definitely seconding. Thank you so much for being here with us today and for practicing the 5 methods after this webinar. Folks asked some questions. They're really big and important questions, and we want to take the time that they deserve to respond. So we don't have that today, but just want to acknowledge that we did see the questions, and we'll do our best to follow up. So thank you for asking them. Sarah, I'll hand it back to you so you can keep reading the takeaways. There's some good stuff I'm seeing.
Yeah. All right. Specific info about orgs that are doing good work. Absolutely. Primary and secondary predators. Absolutely. Articulation of the white nationalist framework. Right on. Revolutionary discipline. The lone wolf strategy. That's one I hear about all the time and am constantly learning about. Talk specifically to young white males. We've all got those relatives. Good to check in. That's right. Yeah, I'm inspired to use this information to navigate tough conversations. Awesome. Importance of discipline in our anti-white supremacy work. Right on. This is awesome, y'all. Thank you so much for sharing. Keep your thoughts coming, and have a good rest of your day. Thanks again for being here. Better understanding of how white nationalism infiltrates all levels of our society. That's right. Thanks again, everyone.